Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muliwanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jadley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so very delighted that you're joining us on our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, Ghana, Himalaya, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcast. Our guests today are Dr. Dawn Menge and Kent Duriyee. They are here to celebrate Queen Vernita visits the land of little rain. Before we invite Dr. Dawn and Kent into the studio, we want to invite you to check out our friend Jeff Gagne and our Dean of all things STEM and STEAM, Jennifer Swanson, and their podcast. It's called Solve It for Kids. Solve It for Kids. This is a fantastic podcast. It was born right here on the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Every week, they answer fantastic questions like, how do you make toilet paper soft? What's it like to fly by Pluto? And do whales have germs? It's a really, really fun podcast that will inspire your kids to check out the STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, math. It's so wonderful. It's lots and lots of fun. The Solve It for Kids podcast, it's available on Apple Podcasts and just about everywhere you can find your podcast. Please check it out today with your kids. The Solve It for Kids podcast, starring our Dean of all things STEM and STEAM, Jennifer Swanson and Jeff Gagne. I am really excited. We are welcoming back one of our favorite guests here today, along with a friend. We're celebrating the recent release of Queen Vernita Visits the Land of Little Rain. Please welcome back to the show Dr. Dawn Menge and her friend Kent Duriyee. Hey, Dr. Dawn, Kent, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I'm excited to have you on. Dr. Dawn is in California. She's been on the show a lot celebrating the Queen Vernita series, and it is quite a wonderful series. Before we invite Kent into the discussion, just please remind us, Dr. Dawn, who Queen Vernita is.
Queen Vernita was named after my grandmother, Vernita, and the book is based on my family travels, and everyone in the book is a real-life person. I have included my students, and since I talked to you last, this summer I went to a film festival. In July, I went to Vegas to a film festival, and the series won the Special Recognition Champion Award from the Conquering Disabilities Film Festival. And I also wrote a book called Dragon's Breath, which is not part of the series, and that won Best Book in the Miracle Makers, and it was honorable mention in Hollywood Dreams.
Hey, congratulations.
So, thank you. That was a wonderful experience.
Yeah. One of the reasons we love the Queen Vernita series is because it does present a really diverse group of characters. A lot of times when authors talk about diversity, they're talking about racial and cultural diversity, which is a wonderful thing to have in books. But what we don't talk about a lot, and when we're talking about diversity, is including people with various disabilities. And one of the neat things, and I think it's the first thing we talked about, is one of your books included a character who had Rett syndrome.
Yes.
And the flower girl for the wedding between my beautiful wife and I was a girl that I was working with in a school for kids with severe developmental disabilities. She had Rett syndrome. She was 10 years old at the time. And at that time, it was believed that kids with Rett syndrome, first it was believed that it only affected girls. We found out that it does affect a few boys. But we also believed at that time that girls who had Rett syndrome had a very short lifespan.
Yes.
I'm really happy to be able to tell you that about 2 years ago, I attended Jennifer's 40th birthday.
Oh my gosh. That's
Yes,
amazing.
yes. And her friend Amy, who is also a student that I work with, is also 40 years old. So they are, hopefully, they're the exceptions that will become the rule when it comes to kids with Rett syndrome.
Well, that's really, yeah, Down syndrome too. They also had short lifespans, and now they're getting longer and longer, and they're living wonderful lives.
Yeah. And it's really important. I love the fact that we're able to use books to help kids understand that people with disabilities are people and they can make great friends.
Yes. The way that I've included, I teach students with severe cognitive delays. I've been doing it for over 20 years. And so the way that I place there's a new month, there's 12 months in each book, and each new month has a new person. And just while you're reading the book, you will find Connor, who has autism, and he's learning about the volcanic islands. And then you learn a little bit about autism and his communication device. And then that's also the book that Ireland and Heather are in, and they're real people. And Ireland has Rett syndrome. But what she's doing in the book is she's lacing flowers together to make leis for her friends in school. And her mom's helping her. And so she's explaining to the queen why her mom needs to help her do this. And so you're learning about Rett syndrome, but you're also learning that the child is living their life. They're going to school. They have friends, and they're making something beautiful for their friends. And I have Down syndrome, and he's learning about astronomy. And so I've just integrated children with disabilities into the adventures, and they're living their lives.
That's wonderful. And that brings us up to the latest book, Queen Vernita Visits the Land of Little Rain. And I think, Kent, that's where you come in, because you were sharing with me earlier that that's you might be in Minnesota right now, but your heart is in the desert.
Yes, indeed. That is a true fact. I grew up on a desert very close to where Dawn lives, and spent a good 30 years near there, and then I moved to Tucson, Arizona, and spent another 10 years there. So I have a lot of desert underneath my belt and in my mind.
And probably in your shoes.
Definitely.
That's actually how Kent and I reconnected. I actually have known Kent since I was 16, and we grew up, parted ways, and he found me through my brother who worked at the school district, and he worked at the University of Tucson, and they had a huge book festival. So I started going there so I could see Kent and go to the book festival. And then we started researching this book 10 years ago. And so we've finally now gotten back to it and actually completed it. And Kent is an amazing writer, and it's going to be one of the best in the series.
So, Kent, why don't you tell us a little bit about the story?
Well, Queen Vernita starts out, and she's at her palace or abode, wherever, and it happens to be a very cold December day, and snowing outside, and she's just really cold and not really happy with being cold, and she starts thinking about the desert, and she thinks of her friend Chongo that she knows, who lives near Tucson, and so she contacts him, and things are arranged, and she winds up meeting Chongo at Hacienda Linda, which is an actual bed and breakfast just south of Tucson a little bit. And the place is absolutely beautiful. It's just astounding. And the story unfolds in and around the Hacienda Linda property, or the bed and breakfast there. They have a hiking trip out to a mission that's fairly close by. They do a lot of walks in the desert and see just the astounding wildlife and environment that surrounds Hacienda Linda, that is the Sonoran Desert. And it traces Queen Vernita's entire year that begins in early January and goes until December. It's lots of fun.
Yeah. As somebody who grew up here on the East Coast, and there's lots of families listening that grew up on the East Coast, maybe grew up in the United Kingdom and Canada, and, haven't had a chance to go to the desert. I just had my first visit to the desert just about a month or so ago. And it's beautiful, but it is, talk about feeling as if you're on a different planet. It very much,
Yes.
And I've spent a lot of time in nature, but nature on the East Coast is a lot different than nature in the desert. Can you talk a little bit about what you love about the desert and what folks who haven't been there probably don't realize about the desert?
Well, the desert is a very secluded and secluding environment, and when you walk out into it, you can feel as though you're enclosed in this sphere that is your existence, and you pass through these other spheres of cactus and animals and rocks and mountains and canyons. It's just the contemplative nature of the place is what really sings to me about the desert and life in general. It's such a parallel to think of how I feel about my life, and to walk out in the desert and experience the desert. The two thought patterns are so similar. That's what I really love about the desert.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the isolation, but more of the tying in of all the spheres of existence. It's beautiful.
Yeah. That was the sense that I had in that solitude and isolation that you were talking about. Even though I was with a group of people on a bus, it was
Right.
You get off that bus and you thought, ooh, I could walk 50, 60 feet away and I'd be all by my lonesome.
And you could keep walking 50 or 60 miles.
Indeed. It was funny. I was sharing with my beautiful wife that when I was growing up, I didn't have a lot of nightmares, but I did have this one recurring dream that always woke me up, and it was me alone, lost in the desert, which was weird because I'd never been there before. But, that was one of those things. It's like, I'm alone. There's nothing here, and I want to wake up. I don't want to be here.
People have often, written and spoken about the desert having a heart, and looking at it from a very human point of view. And I just love the antithesis viewpoint that the desert has given me about that. I think the heart of the desert is that it has no heart. It's there, and you exist within it, and it exists within you. It's an interchange. It's an interface, not an interchange. I've written a lot about the desert, and I wish I could call it all to mind in just 5 minutes, but there's more to it than that.
Yeah. Dr. Dawn, how, in some senses, you've always had co-authors because the kids and the characters in your books are kids that you knew and kids that you taught. And I'm sure some of the stories and some of the inspiration came from these co-authors, if you would. What was it like writing Visits the Land of Little Rain with an actual co-author?
Well, actually, Kent's my third co-author.
Oh, okay.
And he, like I said, he's an amazing writer, and he was able to just weave this amazing story. It's going to be the best one we have. And I really enjoyed working with him. I loved visiting him when he lived in Tucson and showing me around. And I suggest to anybody who goes to Tucson, they have to go to Hacienda Linda. It's the most amazing place. I was just there 2 weeks ago. We had hoped the book would be out, and it wasn't, but we had kind of a party there, And we actually did a live with Ken and talked about some of the illustrations and things there. And I know that the audience can't see it, but we'll put some of the illustrations up. But here's the courtyard for Hacienda Linda. And in this one, this is actually my occupational therapist at work in my classroom, and this is her family. And they were from India. And so this is actually the garments that they wore in one of their celebrations. And then what are we doing here in this page, Kent?
That is the Diwali celebration in November, the Festival of Lights.
Well, we talked a lot about the history of Diwali, and
yes,
they had the celebration there inside Hacienda Linda.
They drew designs on the patio with chalk and lit candles around the yard there, all in commemoration of the Festival of Light. Yeah.
So neat. And so we're not only talking about diversity of culture and diversity of abilities, but also diversity of holidays. What a great way to introduce our kids to cultures from around the world.
Day of the Dead.
We also did the Day of the Dead.
Uh-huh.
And so we taught about the Day of the Dead and why it's celebrated, and they celebrated it there at Hacienda Linda. So we go through a lot of all sorts of different subjects. So while a child's reading the book, they don't really know that they're learning all of this and how much they're actually learning. And so we try to add in, I don't think I have the picture, but my children and I had actually gone to Palm Springs, which is the desert in California, and they had ridden a camel. And I wanted to put the camel in the book, even though it wasn't part of this book. And so I said, Kent, we have to have the camel. And so he researched Tucson and found where they actually had camels in Tucson. And so the Queen is riding the camel on her birthday. And we added that. I had already given that one to Hacienda Linda. But another thing that we talked about was the bats that are there. Ooh. And they're in a cave. And so we talk about bats and the history of bats
and their sonar.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is really fun. The illustrations that Dr. Dawn is sharing with me are absolutely beautiful.
My illustrator is amazing.
Yeah, really pretty. Some nice pastel colors, and in a really nice style that I think older kids would appreciate.
Now, the illustrations for my books come from our actual pictures. And so I go on a trip and I take pictures, and then she see if you can see, this is Kent. He's Changa. And this actually was something that happened to him. Isn't that it, right? The owl?
Yep. The owl, a baby owl, was flying, a very, very young owl, was flying, and it landed in a tree next to, what I assume were its parents. But he landed at the very top, and the tree wasn't strong enough to stand there and hold him, and it drooped over. It sagged. So the baby held on. It was upside down and just hung there for as long as I could watch.
So that is what the illustration is. And then the backgrounds and things are actually illustrations from Linda herself. They have amazing sunsets. And so we borrowed her pictures and made them into illustrations, and that's where they came from.
That's wonderful, wonderful. Kent, what was it like for you collaborating on this story?
It was absolutely wonderful. I had a fantastic time talking about these things with Dawn, and when she brought up Diwali and the camel and probably a couple of other things, I scratched my head and said, how can we do that?
And he made it work.
and we worked it out, and it only took 10 years.
Yeah, I'm not really sure why it took 10 years, but we did.
It didn't have to take 10 years, but we're both busy people. So, it took as long as it took.
Well, I'm taking away from it. You were both having so much fun doing it. You didn't want it to end.
Right.
We actually are going to do one on Death Valley.
Death Valley. Yep.
In February, I'm going to go to Death Valley. I had gone did I go? Last spring. And I was talking to Kent while we were driving, and he was talking about how he had spent so much time in Death Valley, which I have not. And then he shared an article that was actually written in deathvalley.com about his grandmother.
Actually, it's a journal entry that my grandmother wrote about their trip to Death Valley in
1933.
What is it?
I think it's 33.
1933. Yeah. So they had their 1930 Chrysler with them, and I have a few pictures of the trip. It's quite a story. They didn't have any pavement to drive on.
I'm sure. Wow. Well, we're looking forward to that. In the meantime, we should let folks know where they can go to find out more about Queen Vernita Visits the Land of Little Rain and the entire Queen Vernita series.
My publisher is Rushmore Press, and they can be found on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, any place online. You can find them. You can contact me, Dawn Menge, 1 at Facebook, Dawn Menge at Instagram, and Queen Vernita at Twitter. And if you'd like to buy an author signed copy, just contact me, and I will sell directly to whoever wants it.
Awesome.
And mail it to them.
Awesome. Kent, is there a way for folks to get in touch with you if they are so inclined?
Absolutely. My email address is kent@duriyee.net, and they can email me and ask any questions or communicate anything they'd like. Kent@duriyee.net, DURYEE.net.
Excellent. Well, we had a great time talking about the latest book in the Queen Vernita series. It's called Queen Vernita Visits the Land of Little Rain, and we've been talking to the authors, Dr. Dawn Menge and Kent Duriyee. Hey, my friends, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Vikram Madden. He'll be here to celebrate Bobo and Pup Pup, a young graphic novel. That's the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Hey, we would be so very delighted if you could join us on social media. It's really easy. We're really easy to find. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids. You can find us on Twitter @JeadlyMagic. On Instagram, it's @ReadingWithYourKids. You can also find our page on Pinterest, and you can feel free to connect with me personally on Facebook or on LinkedIn. We really love interacting with our fans on social media, and we love to add you to our friends list. Check it out today. We'd also love it if you could go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the contact button to send us a message, and please be sure to sign up for our free newsletter. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to start by thanking our guest, Dr. Dawn Menge, and her friend Kent Duriyee. Please be sure to check out the Queen Vernita series. We love it. Also want to thank our sponsor, the Solve It for Kids podcast, an award-winning podcast from our Dean of all things STEM and STEAM, Jennifer Swanson and Jeff Gagne. Also want to thank my team, Alejandra Doherty, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to tip our hat and give you a big thank you. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.